passed down to you by Cuauhtémoc, Eagle Warrior of Tenochtitlan. An omen appeared above the forest, the shape of an ear of corn, but blazing like day.
Once known as one of the most fearsome civilizations in Age of Empires 2, the Aztecs are one of the 3 Meso-civs in the game that have since been nerfed in recent patches. Yet their strong economy, fast production, menacing monks, and powerful eagles still solidify them as a decent choice for most maps and settings. Welcome to Age of Noob everyone, and to the summary guide for the mighty Aztecs. The Aztecs are characterized as an infantry and monk civilization by the developers, and it's hard to disagree with this. Let's begin with the Civ Bonuses first. The Aztec villagers carry 3 additional resources, their military units create 11% faster, their monks receive 5 additional HP with each monastery technology researched, and they begin the game with 50 extra gold. Also, their team bonus increases relic gold generation by 33%. Economically, the Aztecs were once regarded as one of the most formidable civilizations, though this prowess has been somewhat diminished due to multiple nerfs as well as the introduction of many new, eco-heavy civilizations. Nonetheless, villagers gathering 3 additional resources is still nothing to scoff at, as it acts almost like a free but lesser version of wheelbarrow from the start of the game. The Aztecs only miss out on 2-man saw and guilds, and their relic bonus is situational at best to count as a general eco bonus. But apart from these, there's not much else to cover here. Militarily, the Aztecs have only one unique unit, and it's the Jaguar Warrior, a very powerful infantry that can beat almost every other infantry unit in the game, with the exception of the Samurais and the Teutonic Knights. As usual, they're tough to mass and transition into due to the need of constructing castles, and since castle construction is usually not prioritized in most Aztec playstyles, we don't often get to see the Jaguars in action all that much. The Aztecs' 2 unique castle technologies are both militarily focused, as Xolotl in the Castle Age provides +1 attack and range to your skirmishers, and Garland Wards in the Imperial Age provides +4 attack to infantry. I'll get into why Xolotl is quite useful in a moment, and although Garland Wards is also a decent technology, it's a very expensive and gold-heavy investment, so it usually comes last in the priority of technologies to research for your infantry. Being one of the Mesoamerican civilizations, the Aztecs of course don't have access to the stable in regular games, but keep in mind that converted enemy stables can create a unique unit called the Xolotl Warrior. It's akin to the Knight in terms of stats, but since it can neither be reliably massed nor can be upgraded in the Imperial Age, it's more or less a meme unit that shouldn't be taken seriously. At the Barracks and Blacksmith for infantry units, the Aztecs have a fully open tree with the exception of the Halberdier upgrade. Since they do have exceptional eagles, having access to halbs alongside Garland Wards in the late game would be broken, so the omission makes sense here. That said, for newer players out there, the +4 from Garland Wards is nowhere near enough to make up for the massive difference in bonus damage between pikes and halbs, so late game Aztec pikes aren't really that good. On the flip side, alongside their fantastic eagles, their champions are some of the strongest in the game as well, as they have access to gambesons, Garland Wards, and a production bonus of 11% to mass them quicker. At the archer range, the Aztecs begin to show some of their weaknesses. They of course don't have access to the cavalry archers, but the most notable gaps here are the lack of both thumb ring as well as the final ring archer armor upgrade. The omission of both have big implications, as their crossbows and arbalests may be serviceable in certain scenarios and openings, but they are limited to a time window and will fall weaker as the game progresses. That said, the lack of armor for the skirmishers is thankfully mitigated by the Xolotl upgrade. Although not exactly the same, Aztec skirms are arguably better than generic, fully upgraded skirms against many archer and non-archer units. Yes, the +1 range makes a big difference, but the +1 attack can also sometimes cut the critical mass limit by a half or third depending on the target's pierce armor. So don't underestimate Aztec skirm's late game damage against low pierce armor targets when massed. At the Siege Workshop, the Aztecs have decent options with Siege Rams as well as Siege Onagers with Siege Engineers, but apart from the production bonus, there's nothing special here. The Aztecs' Monastery, on the other hand, is arguably the best in the game, as they have all technologies available and their monks can get up to a maximum of a whopping 95 HP when all technologies are researched. Practically though, it costs roughly 4,600 resources to get there, about 3,800 of which is gold, so your opponent cannot just casually get to 95 HP monks unless you're not applying any pressure at all. That said, the Aztecs' docks are unexceptional in the early game and very weak in the late game. The only bonus that applies here again is the 11% production bonus, but missing out on almost all Imperial upgrades makes them a bad pick in water or hybrid maps. Lastly, the Aztec University is decent but unveils a distinct vulnerability in fortifications. Their lack of hoardings from the castle and the keep tower, bombard tower, and both masonry and architecture from the university highlights their deficiency in fortified structures. While the lack of architecture isn't the biggest deal for most civilizations, the absence of masonry can be definitely felt when on the defensive. Yet again, this underscores the Aztec strategic orientation as an aggressive civilization. In simpler terms, you won't have a good time defending with the Aztecs, so try not to allow this as you approach the mid-game. This makes a good transition to their playstyle and army composition. Given their inclination to not adopt a passive booming strategy, it's common to witness proactive openings that pave the way for a seamless shift into their potent eagles during the Castle Age, a period where the Aztecs truly begin to excel. Leveraging their strong monks alongside an onslaught of eagles, complemented by strategic employment of mangonels, creates a formidable composition with which you will attempt to snowball the game in your favor in the mid-game. The rationale behind this is pivotal. Your aggression serves as a dual purpose by both pressuring opponents and buying a crucial time to establish a sufficiently strong economy. This economic foundation then becomes the bedrock for sustaining your eagle spam into the Imperial Age. Failing to inflict substantial damage early on leaves you vulnerable to the ascent of more potent late-game units from your opponents that can eventually overwhelm your eagles and monks. Not to mention that your weak fortifications will crumble against the mildest of sieges. Hence, your main composition usually revolves around eagles and monks, and you can situationally add mangonels, skirmishers, pikes, champions, or even Jaguar Warriors depending on the matchup and how the game progresses. But yes, your main go-to unit will almost always be your eagles. This means that not many civilizations can deal with the Aztecs in the Castle Age and into the early Imperial, but once the game goes late enough, the Aztecs will begin to struggle against certain matchups. Your eagles aren't fast enough to deal with mounted unit raids, your pikes are too weak by that stage, your monks will die to massed hussars and their variants, and you will be raided to death due to the weak defenses and lack of halberdier. Hence, high damage or high armor targets as well as mounted units with high pierce armor are your bane of existence, and your job as the Aztecs is not to allow your opponent to get to their powerful late-game units on even footing. And finally, the Aztecs are not the best in either the flank or pocket position in team games. They're not great at flank positions due to their suboptimal ranged units, and they're not the best in the pocket position either due to the plethora of strong cavalry civilizations that will both outrun and outmuscle your eagles. Hence, although the Aztecs are not detrimental in team games, there are just better civ choices out there for both positions, as the Aztecs are better suited for 1v1s. In summary, the Aztecs are an aggressive civilization that boasts menacing eagles and monks with incredible power spiking in the mid-game. Due to their forceful and rigid playstyle though, the Aztecs' predictability and heavy reliance on execution reward skilled players but make it otherwise tough to pilot for lower elo ones. They also have an awkward transition from feudal to castle, have weak defenses, and are gold reliant. But if you can get to your mass eagles and suffocate your opponents in time, the Aztecs are one of the most oppressive civilizations to play against in Age of Empires 2. Just be sure that you don't let your opponent get to their heavy and mounted units in the late game, as the tables will turn very quickly then. To wrap up, let's go back in time to 1521 and revisit the fall of Tenochtitlan, waged between the Spanish led by Hernán Cortés and the Aztecs led by Cuauhtémoc, the Emperor of Tenochtitlan. Hope you all enjoyed this short summary. Be sure to subscribe to Age of Noob for AoE content and Game Noob for game reviews, and until our paths cross again, Makwali Tonali.